Good evening, friends, and those that have come tonight. We are happy to share our contemplative service that's part of our overall contemplative ministry of LCR. And we will be reflecting tonight on the ideas inherent in contemplative prayer. So I will introduce myself. I'm Martha Newfield, one of the leaders in this ministry, and I will talk for just a minute, and hello to everybody that's here tonight. And just to give you a sense of the program that we're going to go through, the presenter usually gives a introductory remark and then a idea or reflection to think about, and we will go through that and reflect on that for a minute, and then we'll go into our usual time of 10 minutes of silent contemplation, and at the end of 10 minutes you will hear a bell chime, and that will be the end of the 10 minutes, so you're able to relax and feel like that you don't have to watch the time yourself. After that, we're always honored to be able to read the people that have submitted their names and who asked for particular healing or a particular problem in their life, and we're glad to be able to pray for those people. So I will begin tonight and go right into our reflection that we'll be talking about tonight. I wanted to talk for a minute about the challenge of contemplative prayer. It is a prayer that does take time, and it does take patience, and oftentimes people get discouraged because they feel like their brain just whips out into a whole different place and you don't have good control over it, but that's kind of the nature of a brain, and it wants to think, and learning how to control what old monks of old called the monkey brain is a practice that you learn to do to quieten the mind and to be able to quieten your own heart down enough to hear and to feel the spirit within. So just to give you a word of encouragement on this practice and how other people have begun to understand it, I wanted to start with this little story of a person that joined a bird watchers club, and they told her that to begin with listening to birds, the thing to do was to choose her favorite bird that lived in the area and begin learning that bird's name and his call, and it would be a way of beginning to train her ear to hear that bird call. So at first, when she went into the woods and started trying to listen, it just seemed like, you know, she heard all of the squirrels and the chatter and the other bird calls, and she was like, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to do this. But as time went on, and she would go home and listen on the tape to the bird call, she knows what she would say, I know what it sounds like, I just have to listen for it. As time went on, she found that she could begin hearing it. And it was both a balance of hearing that bird call and being able to quieten down extraneous noises so that her bird call could come forward. And it was a discipline that she learned, and I always thought that was a really good analogy to what we often try to do in contemplative prayer, is how to quieten down those extraneous noises, not only around us, but in our own mind, so that we can begin listening for the one that comes to us in the silence. So to begin this reflection, I'll start sort of here. So it is with the prayer of contemplative silence as we strive to eliminate extraneous thoughts and sounds. Let us not get too discouraged. For, as the Apostle Paul wrote, as we wait in eager longing, the Spirit helps us in our weakness, for we do not know how to pray as we ought, but the Spirit intercedes for us with sighs too deep for words. So it's such a beautiful, encouraging word from Paul that we don't know how to pray. We can't do this. But the Spirit within is strengthening us and encouraging us. The author, Vincent Pizzuto, echoes this observation when he writes, "This inward groaning is not merely a theoretical condition, but an apt description of the contemplative prayer presence and practice of contemplative prayer. Hampered and limping by our addiction to our own selves and the world of noise, speed, and images, we resist the growth that can come only by stepping into the transcendent space of self-forgetfulness through silence, solitude, prayer, and self-giving listening." So when I said, okay, self-giving listening, that was a new thought. I haven't heard that phrase before. So I asked the question, what does self-giving listening actually, what does that mean? Pizzuto, the author, again explains it in this way. Contemplative prayer, in a way, is an eavesdropping on God's conversation with himself, to creation, and all that is. When we open our minds in wordless silence, we become a receptive listener to God's conversation with the God within us. It might be as if we were on the road to Emmaus and God comes alongside of us and begins speaking with truth and love so that our hearts are stirred. Will we get discouraged and want to give up? Probably. Because it takes patience, and it is really hard. However, we are developing a new kind of hearing skill that's new to us. Just like the birder who struggled with hearing the birds call. It involved going back into the woods, straining to listen, learning to eliminate extraneous sounds until she got really good at it. In fact, she reported later that once just walking in a park in a urban area, she picked up over the sound of cars racing by the sound of a bird in this park. So we get tuned. We are able to get tuned to certain sounds and even be able to be tuned to the Lord speaking. So Pizzuto writes this encouragement. So it is with contemplative prayer. One may not be conscious of the transformative work of the Spirit during contemplative prayer or even for a while, but the effects of that transformation are increasingly evident in the manner in which one outwardly embodies the love of Christ in the world in acts of kindness and loving generosity. And people that have been in the practice a long time, I remember them talking, and they said, yeah, that's really true. It was like, you know, I did feel moved to be more helpful. There were often times that I did show kindness, and I was like, oh, okay. It was almost like a surprise to myself. Was it the Spirit working within? Probably. It was a new spirit that came in? Probably. And it's something that we just began recognizing over time. It's not an answer that will come immediately. It's not a change that will come over immediately. But in time, it is an experience that we began to recognize. So let's just talk for a minute about that idea. Has anybody experienced that or wanted to share a moment that you went, oh yeah, maybe that's the Spirit at work? Ted, you could probably speak with that.
I first learned that when I sat with my dad in the woods. He was 100.
Oh yeah.
And when I first was with him, it was kind of hard as a teenager to remain still, sitting in the woods for a long period of time, until Dad said two things. First thing he said was, watch the sun dance into the woods. Because we began while it was still quite dark. He said, watch the sun dance into the woods, how it embraces the trees. And then listen for all the animals as they start to awaken and take their part in the dance of the woods. He said, by the way, also you'll be able to hear the deer before you see them.
Sounds like your father was a poet.
He was a unique gentleman in many ways. Although he was not well educated in scholastics, but he had a deep love of nature. He loved to be in it, he respected it, and even in our hunting, it was much like the Indians. When they did kill an animal, I understand that many of the Indians would, and even in African culture, would thank the animal for sharing himself. And my father, we always did that. We always respected the animal. We thanked the animal for sharing its life with us. And our first meal was a meal where we paused before we actually participated in partaking that first camp meal. And thank God for creation and thank God for the gift of that deer sharing his life.
Yeah. Beautiful.
I think at times, Martha, we, all of us here watching at home, at times we're all afraid of silence. And you do anything you can to avoid silence. But that's completely wrong. God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth. We should listen twice as much as we talk. And silence is so powerful.
It is.
In a few minutes, we'll sit here for 10 minutes in silence. And that isn't a time to go to sleep. That's not a time to think about what I have to do when I get home tonight. That's here to, as the opening paragraph said, which you did not read, but it's fascinating paragraph. For us in our society of noise, words, constant imaging, conflicting messages, go faster, go deeper, go cooler, go stronger, we are often beyond challenge and faced with the terror of an institution to say nothing, to do nothing, think nothing, only just listen. Yes, it's hard. It is a skill that one can get better at. So true.
Yeah. Well said, thank you.
I see that in my teaching. I teach junior high, and it's a blend of 7th and 8th grade students. And when they come in from lunch, we have what we call solo time, and I often put on some music, and we do what's called mindfulness, very similar. And the energy in the room is so different when we are done with the mindfulness. It's just very calm,
Really? That's
settled.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I've heard it's effective in the schools. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I've never known anybody who actually did it.
Yeah, my students ask for it, and they're so
Oh, they
grateful.
ask for it now.
Mhm.
Interesting. Well, one thing that I think about in trying to settle down and, not think about things is just to concentrate on your breath as you breathe out and in, remembering that that's what the ancient Israelites said when they asked God, "Who are you? And what is your name?" And he just said, "I am the great I am." And they're like, "Well, who would that be?" And they finally decided, well, the only thing that we do know about God is that he breathes life into everything with his breath. And if the breath is not there, then God is not there. So they called him Yahweh, the breath. So I often think about that. If we just concentrate on breathing in, we're breathing in God, the breath, the life, the presence. And I think that's such a really powerful idea. At least it is for me. Well, let's go then with these thoughts into our time of silent prayer and taking these ideas or just listening to your own breath as you breathe in and out, that knowing that the God is in the breath, that he will be there and be present with you. So in 10 minutes, you'll hear the chime, and we will begin then with our rest of the service. Let us now gather our hearts and minds in spoken prayer. O Christ, we ask your mercy and encouragement for the suffering human communities in the world, the Ukrainians in their terrible time of trial, and for countries that are suffering through droughts and floods. We ask too for our LCR brothers and sisters who are sick and in need of your healing and comfort. Send now the mystery of your presence in the light of each candle as we read their names around the circle. I'll just begin, and let's just continue till we get to the end of our prayers. Gil Constero,
East Hamilton,
Diane Ross,
Marty Kutzbach,
Ukraine,
Don Lomax,
Pastor Lisa Bernheisel,
Joyce Anderson,
Harry Von Bush,
hear our prayer, Lord. Send your comfort and your healing on all these names. We ask in your precious name. Be with us now as we ask for others, as we bring forth our own petitions. Everybody that wants to, feel free to come now and light a candle. When we open the door of silence and go inside, God is there, as silent as a radiant star, and as deeply caring as a mother for her precious child, all speaking in their own language. God's language is love. His presence, the breath, and the sound of our own beating heart. We can begin to know that and hear that simply listening in the silence. Amen. Go in peace. I'll remain in prayer.